This video is brought to you by Gigabyte Aorus and their brand new range of Z890 motherboards supporting the all-new Intel Ultra-Core Series 2 processors. Featuring robust power and cooling, Wi-Fi 7 and plenty of M2 slots, these motherboards can handle whatever you throw at them, be it ultra settings gaming or demanding AI-enabled workflows. To celebrate their launch, Gigabyte is giving away a PC to one lucky viewer of this channel. Stick around to the end of the video to learn more.
Jesus!
Look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to convince you of this by the end of the review, but I really believe that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is an all-timer, and we're going to be talking about it like 20 years from now. It's going to be added to the list of best licensed games, best tomb raiding games, best Xbox games, best games set in the Vatican. To be fair, that is a very short list. Like, I really believe in this opening release window there's going to be some umming and ahhing about how well the hub areas work and how dumb the enemy AI is or whatever. But in 5 years' time, no one's going to give a fuck about any of that, and all you're going to see are YouTube essays either nostalgia thirsting, like they don't make games like this anymore, or doing like 6-hour deep dives into why the Great Circle's level design is so masterful. And I'm 100% serious about both of those predictions, by the way. You can bookmark that. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is so surprising for so many reasons. I mean, first of all, no one really had high expectations for this because we all kind of just expected first-person Uncharted. Like, what else could it be, right? Well, a lot more actually. It's hub-based exploration that rewards your curiosity, it's side quests that are deeply folded into the main narrative, it's non-linear level design that gives you so many entry and exit points littered with tools that allow you to adopt different gameplay styles, moving seamlessly between stealth and combat and back again whenever the situation calls for it. It's also really stripped back in a good way. Like, this is a AAA game, absolutely, but it doesn't feel like it. We all expected the Great Circle to be like a Sony game, but in first person, but this feels so much more tactile and authentic. And this is going to sound really weird, but I was thinking a lot about this because, you know, I was playing an Indiana Jones game. But the Great Circle feels like a really high quality leather product, like a pair of boots or a whip or a jacket. Like, if you've ever bought any one of those, you know what I'm talking about. Like, they seem really simple in their construction, but that's only because a huge amount of craftsmanship has gone into making them look really simple. They are durable to the point where they can withstand anything you throw at them, and they're beautiful, and their beauty does not fade. They just get a weathered look that only adds to their charm. The Great Circle looks so simple on the surface, but underneath that simplicity is so much elegant design about how to approach something as simple as a main menu screen, or as complex as seamlessly weaving side content into a broader storyline. The Great Circle is highly durable in the sense that any way you want to play it, from sneaky stealth boy to BJ Blazkowicz with a fedora, the game will let you do it and it will work flawlessly. And my god, is this game beautiful. And it's beautiful in a way that will stand the test of time because its rendition of these historic settings perfectly captures their timeless beauty, and in the more intimate spaces and moments, the attention to detail for things like decor, character blocking, and lighting are frequently stunning. As someone with a deep, deep love of this source material, I spent a lot of time wondering if I loved this as much as I did purely because I love the movies. And I came to the conclusion that it surely doesn't hurt. Certainly at times I was laughing out loud because of how impressed I was at Machine Games' ability to capture the essence of those legendary films. But you know, I love the Avengers, and I didn't like the Avengers game. I love the Lord of the Rings, and I didn't like Gollum. Point is, games can't rely on their source material alone. They have to stand on their own 2 feet. And I really believe that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle stands very, very tall indeed. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle begins here, a shot-for-shot remake of the opening of the first film, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's an opening that's been received really well in that it's clearly Machine Games paying their respects to those movies while allowing us to see those events through Indy's eyes, and most people really love that. Me personally, I actually think this is the weakest part of the whole game because of how much it invites a comparison that the game can never live up to. I mean, digital Indiana Jones looks pretty damn good, but Harrison Ford in his prime was a handsome motherfucker in a way that that even technology 40 years later cannot fully capture. Walking through a jungle without the credits overlaid and without that John Williams score carefully narrating every single step, it just kind of feels a little sourceless. And the iconic boulder sequence, the only reason it's iconic is because in the film, you can see the boulder nipping at Indy's heels. In The Great Circle, you're just a dude running through a cave.
Man I knew 10 years ago. I learned to hate you in the last 10 years. Where the hell were you?
Interestingly, I think this boulder sequence would have worked really well in a third-person, over-the-shoulder Sony game because you can frame shots however you please when you're doing that. But here in The Great Circle, the perspective shift robs this sequence of the very thing that makes it so memorable, the boulder. I will admit, I was never really on board with the idea of a first-person Indiana Jones game. Thinking about moments like this boulder chase, thinking about seeing Indy on screen as he jumps and swings and dangles and punches Nazis, I'm like, surely this is a third-person experience, right? There's also the learned experience of Uncharted, which is highly Indiana Jones coded, and that was a third-person game, so surely an Indiana Jones game should be third-person too, right? Honestly, never been happier to have been totally wrong about something. Machine Games' decision to make this a first-person experience is the cornerstone on which the rest of this game's greatness is built. Not only does it work from an immersion perspective, but it creates a clear dividing line between the entire generation's worth of third-person cinematic Sony-style games we've been playing since the likes of Uncharted laid down that template. Set against that, The Great Circle feels incredibly fresh. Because yeah, you can liken this to Dishonored and Thief and Chronicles of Riddick, but they aren't making those games anymore, and besides, this isn't quite like any of those. It doesn't have the funky powers of Dishonored or the rigid stealth focus of Thief, and Riddick was very often a first-person shooter, which this definitely is not. It's its own totally unique blend of stealth and combat and exploration and puzzle solving, all of it delivered through a first-person perspective that lets you put on the fedora for the first time, that lets you gaze upon some hidden tomb that no one has laid eyes on for thousands of years, that lets you put up your dukes as you square off against a Nazi bruiser. And because the rest of the game is built as a video game, played in the first-person perspective, there's never another moment like that boulder sequence, where it seems as though the game is trying but failing to achieve something that the films all did better. In fact, more often than not, I was struck by how much The Great Circle was able to find its own way to match some of the high points of the 3 Indiana Jones films, because as we know, only 3 Indiana Jones films have ever been made. Tone is an area where Machine Games really understood the assignment. At every moment, it just feels perfect. I mean, at one moment you're breathlessly leaping aboard a Zeppelin as it unmoors from the St. Peter's Dome, and in the next you can hear the perfectly channeled schoolboy-esque excitement of Troy Baker's Indy as he lays out a theory for what the Great Circle is.
Throughout history, mankind has built sites of great spiritual significance. Siwa, Giza, Persepolis, Mohenjo-Daro, Sukhothai, Nazca, Machu Picchu. Now, here's the strange part. If you were to draw a line through these ancient sites around the globe, you get a perfectly aligned circle.
The Great Circle.
Exactly.
It also totally, and I mean totally, nails the Indiana Jones sense of humor, which can often rely on fairly lengthy gags with some big payoff, like this one here where a fascist soldier buys Indy's priest disguise and pulls him into a confessional booth so he can receive his absolution.
I had an affair with my mother-in-law.
It's all right. Just say 3 Hail Marys.
No, Father, you don't understand. My wife is expecting a child, and I fear that.
What?
Yeah, let me finish, please. I fear that my mother-in-law is with the child also.
Jesus Christ, what have you done?
Wait. You are not a priest.
The real tonal standout, though, are the Nazis, particularly the main antagonist, Voss. This is some top-tier villain shit right here. Voss is absolutely brilliant, played by Marius Gavrilis. He is both refined yet barbaric, logical and dispassionate in one moment, and then stark raving mad in the next. His interactions with a rival German commander are legit the best scenes in the entire game, as the two of them perform an extremely prolonged dick-measuring contest for our enjoyment.
Wo waren die Affengeräusche? Ihren peinlichen Versuch, Dominanz zu zeigen, zu unterstreichen.
Voss feels that classic indie villain archetype, the one where they kind of hate-respect Indy because they know that he's the best in the field, and they're jealous of that, and they need to rely on his daring and brilliance to make the breakthroughs that they alone cannot. Voss is always reaching out to Indy whenever they meet, and that gives all of their scenes so much depth, because just as much as Voss wants to find the secret of the Great Circle, he wants to be able to converse with Indy, to share ideas and theories, to dialogue with someone he considers an equal. It's something that Indy can never and would never give him, and that irreconcilable tension gives all of their face-to-face standoffs so much electricity.
It's been a long time, Indiana. I have missed our conversations.
That makes one of us.
The same authenticity exists when it comes to every aspect of this game's visuals. Honestly, there's just so much to say about this that it's hard to know where to start. Let's talk performance first though, because Jesus Christ, it's crazy how well this game runs, given how good it looks. So yeah, the minimum specs for this on PC are really high. It actually recommends a 3080 Ti to be able to play at recommended settings. But that hasn't been the lived experience of most people playing this. Many people are playing it on lower end machines and it runs just fine and looks great while doing it. This is, after all, running on the id Tech engine, which is some sort of wicked black magic that we mere mortals or Tim Sweeney could never dream of understanding. When playing on higher end PCs though, this is unbelievable in the sense that it actually delivers what you'd expect from a AAA game running on high-end hardware. Like, I can crank every setting to max, and that's including ray tracing baked in, mind you. I can run it at 4K, DLSS set to quality, and I'm able to get a locked 120 FPS with it just looking remarkable. And not to sound entitled or whatever, but like, that's what we should regularly be getting on hardware that is that capable. Instead, we usually get like horrendous shader stutter and unreliable frame rates, and the dream of ray tracing is a distant one that feels further and further away with each new release. The sheer craftsmanship of this video game can be felt across every part of it, but in particular how well it runs and how good it looks while doing it. Because, yeah, what a game to look at. Honestly, it would stop me in my tracks so often. I'd just be like, how on earth did Machine Games pull this off? I realized that a huge part of its visual impact is the fact that it's rendering real spaces, as we might today encounter them. This is not a futuristic space station or an Overwatch map or a post-apocalyptic setting. It's not Anor Londo or the Erdtree. It's not Orgrimmar or some Forge world from Warhammer 40k. I looked at the top 20 highest rated games for 2024, and the only one of them that was set in what we might call a real setting was Like a Dragon Infinite. I did the same thing for 2023, and the only game in the top 20 set in a real setting was Alan Wake 2. It's not a criticism, by the way, it's just a fact that most games are not set in real settings, and when they are, they're often sort of messed up interpretations of them, like The Last of Us, or even Alan Wake actually. The Great Circle's locales are these dreamy, idyllic, gorgeous, sunny, real-world locations, adorned in all the accoutrements of 1936, a period where people still had books on their shelves, and typewriters, and ye olde telephones where you had to click the receiver and ask for an operator. There's this one tent that you spend a bit of time in Giza, and I found myself just slowly panning around it because I was like, look at this detail, look at how lovingly crafted and deliberately placed every asset is, look at the way all of this is lit. Same sort of thing inside the Zeppelin, where there's a few rooms full of just material, and it looks impressive when it had absolutely no reason to be, because you don't even do anything in these cages, you just kind of walk past them. Zooming out from these settings, they're as impressive to look at from afar as they are up close. A vista overlooking Rome with St. Peter's Basilica in the distance. The pyramids of Giza have honestly never looked better in any video game. You spend like 10 minutes in Shanghai and it's like one of the best looking video game environments I've stepped into this year. The art design in this game is just completely off the hook. But also the range of the art design within specific spaces and how densely all of that is packed in. This footage that I'm showing you here is from a single gameplay clip that I recorded that goes for 13 minutes. In that 13 minutes, I walked through a barracks for the fascist forces occupying the Vatican, the cobbled thoroughfares of Vatican City, a bedraped chapel under renovation, the Vatican's red-bricked rooftops, a grand marble-floored museum, a bustling piazza, and a dig site. The Great Circle is so visually dense that it's serving up in 13 minutes the kind of visual diversity that other games would meter out over 13 hours. Oh, and of course, the Sistine Chapel's in there too, but you know, that's a separate clip. And then there's the framing all of these monuments and the secrets you uncover both above and below them. I mean, the scene of a Zeppelin pulling up over the Vatican and docking in St. Peter's Dome, that is some evocative imagery that feels right at home in Indiana Jones, and exactly the same way that this warrior's tomb feels like it's been pulled straight from The Last Crusade. The way each of these new, hidden, underground discoveries is framed and lit the first moment you see them, it really does stop you in your tracks almost every time. But equally impressive in a totally different way is the way that many of the cutscenes are lit. Like, look at this cutscene. The lighting here is not remotely realistic because it's not meant to be. It's meant to be romantic, and not in a dinner and flowers kind of way. It's the romance of adventure. A group of friends are watching sunset, sailing the seas towards their next dangerous escapade. Like, come on, you're gonna look at this and tell me you don't wish you were right there on deck with them? Raiders of the Lost Ark is over 40 years old now. The Last Crusade is 35 years old. And that is, of course, the last Indiana Jones film ever released. In the intervening period, we might have wondered how well all of this holds up 3 or 4 decades later, and would any of it need to be updated or augmented so it still hits right in 2024? And the answer is no. Indy is still the same guy, and Troy Baker's performance perfectly captures both the sound of Harrison Ford's voice and the energy of his performance. Nazis are still the perfect foil for Indy, obsessive and sadistic, with their mania making them ripe for comedic ribbing. The wonders of the ancient and modern worlds are still as awe-inspiring to explore as ever, and modern technology makes that exploration regularly over-awing for how good all of this looks. The aesthetic and tone of the original films is perfectly captured here, which is one essential part of the overall equation in a good video game adaptation. The other part is how well all of this plays, and I think opinion on that is going to be a lot more divided, but for me, I think it's just as much of a home run as the rest of the package. The most surprising thing about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is that it manages to show us parts of Indiana Jones that we've never seen before. The parts where he isn't dangling from the end of a whip, or hightailing it out of a freshly looted tomb, or wooing some fiery damsel du jour. The Great Circle shows us what happens between all of that other, more exciting stuff. At first, I was like, oh no, this is a bad idea. Like, Indiana Jones shouldn't exist outside of these moments. I don't want to see this man doing his taxes or shuffling around his place of business. That's taking a myth and making it real, and that always sucks. And I continued to feel that way after I settled into the game's first hub, the Vatican. So the way this works is that this is a game that'll run you around 10 to 12 hours depending on how much side content you do, and all of that side content exists in one of 3 hubs you'll visit: the Vatican, Giza, and Siam, now known as Thailand. These hubs are all very densely packed with a mix of side quests, puzzles, collectibles, and restricted areas that each house a cheeky bit of currency or an upgrade book. What's important to understand is that all of it, every single bit of side content, is entirely optional. You don't have to do any of it, and that's why a beeline playthrough of this game is like 9 hours long, whereas a fairly thorough playthrough will run you 20 hours plus. So like I said, I'm at the Vatican, I've been given a priest disguise that lets me move around freely, and I'm picking up documents that are kicking off side quests, and I'm thinking to myself, I just don't know about this. Where's the urgency that is one of the hallmarks of the Indiana Jones vibe? That urgency never comes in these spaces, but what does come is an acceptance of the idea that there is actually more to Indiana Jones than just his breathless escapades. I didn't think I would like the experience of just hanging out in a space, exploring things at my own pace, chatting with people, reading shit I picked up off the floor, but the truth is, I did, because all of it was in service to the main plot, rather than feeling like traditional side content as we might typically refer to it. The best example of this are the side quests you do. So again, calling them side quests is a bit of a misnomer, because they're all folding into the broader game plot, illuminating an auxiliary aspect of the broader mystery. I would go as far as to say that if you don't do them, you're not going to get the full context of what's going on in that main plot. And while you can certainly complete it without doing that side content, each new reveal feels so much more revelatory and satisfying when you've got that added color around it. This content is also full of unique character moments and interactions that are on the same level as moments in the main storyline, and it often sends you to intricately detailed locations you would have never visited had you not committed to these optional objectives. So yeah, it is kind of weird strolling about the Vatican hoping to find something to do, but when you find it, it's always extremely worthwhile, and honestly, I think that Machine Games' approach to side content here is a straight up case study that I hope other games will pick up and run with. But what are you doing when it's time to drop the disguise, put on the fedora, and head out into the field? Well, there's a lot of tomb raiding, but to be honest, I actually think these are some of the low points for the game. There are ledges to be mantled over, conveniently placed grapple points that are perfect for a whip to latch onto, there's walls to be shimmied against and gapped gaps to jump over. The thing is, Indy's movement is deliberately very slow because it's trying to be realistic, and so many of these sequences can feel a little drawn out as a result, especially if you happen to miss a jump and have to redo a section. There are puzzles, but these aren't really anything to write home about. Again, they're authentic to the franchise, but they're very simple, and you've either done them before in a different game, or you've done some variation of them. I think the big issue with these tombs is that they all feel very similar in that they don't reach for much. They're workmanlike rather than memorable. The one exception to this is this tomb, which really goes all in on the visual design and the danger and the puzzle stuff. It's some real Temple of Doom shit right here, and its audaciousness stands out against the broader tomb level design, which can often feel quite restrained or safe. The real brilliance of the Great Circle's gameplay, though, lies in its level design powered stealth and its lightweight but reactive combat sandbox. You've probably heard already that the Great Circle is an immersive sim light. But what does that actually mean? Well, immersive sims are games that are really focused on giving you multiple ways to complete an objective, making great use of your environment while doing it. When you really settle into the core loop of the Great Circle, you immediately see how much of that description applies here. The core of it is actually level design. Every Nazi or fascist camp, every factory or office building or outpost or whatever, they all have so many points of entry that the start of every encounter is, which way do I go in? And you'll keep asking that question as you make your way further and further in, because the entire level is built to give you so many options. And it also feels so handcrafted and curated too. Like there are a dozen instances where I could see the level layout and I could see the options available to me, but I could also see where Machine Games wanted me to go. They definitely mark out a golden path through most of these spaces, and that's not a criticism, mind you, because spotting that path and then making use of the cover properly and timing the enemy patrols just right, it feels very skillful, and you do feel like Indiana Jones, you really do. This isn't meant to be a very challenging stealth puzzle experience requiring a lot of creative puzzle solving. It's meant to be a power fantasy, and the level design subtly but deliberately guiding you towards that fantasy is a feature, not a bug. Much the same can be said of the game's stealth. I've definitely seen plenty of criticism about how dumb the AI is, how inconsistent their vision cones are, how goofy their behavior can be, and it's all true, 100%. I've got plenty of my own footage where I'm looking at something going down and I'm thinking, that is pretty silly. But I come back to what I said, which is that I'm not playing Indiana Jones for, you know, a really challenging, sophisticated stealth sandbox. Like, I just want to be able to sneak past some Nazis, punch a bunch of them when I fuck up, and let the good times keep rolling. Tuned as it is, it works, so I think that Machine Games dialed it in here correctly. But of course, you will get spotted often, and then it's time to throw down. It's a mix of bare-knuckle boxing, which is simple, but really well-tuned given the limits the stamina bar imposes. You can pick up melee weapons to give yourself a big advantage, and so combat is regularly about breaking weapons and then frantically looking around on the ground to pick up something else. Where combat is at its absolute best, though, is when guns get involved. And what makes the combat loop so great here is that ammo is extremely limited for whatever gun you happen to pick up, and so you find yourself not only moving to avoid enemy haymakers and gunfire, and not only trying to quickly land your own shots, but also being forced out into the open to pick up a new gun when your old one runs dry. This creates an extremely fluid, almost cinematic combat rhythm, because you can't just hunker down behind cover like you can in basically any other game with guns. And mind you, you might go from like a shovel to a shotgun to a broom handle and then to a rifle, all within the span of like 30 seconds. And that's just fucking cool, man. I'm sorry, but it is. Like, what other game is asking you to do that? If I had one big complaint about the Great Circle, it's that this combat rhythm wasn't invited enough. Like, you can do this almost any time you like, but most of us, myself included, are just gonna default to a more stealthy approach. I think it would have been great if Machine Games had forced this type of rhythm more, because it is sick. It is unique in that no other game has done it in quite the same way, and it's perfect for Indiana Jones, a man who in every moment has to be scrappy and adaptive because he's just one man against a literal army. At its core, Indiana Jones is about the sort of adventure that was never truly possible but imagined freely in a bygone era. French comics like Tintin, spaghetti westerns, space operas like Flash Gordon. There was a time before the internet and before Google Maps where you could rightly imagine a temple buried deep within some rainforest that only a native tribe had laid eyes on. For cinema, it was a golden age of big-name directors laying down the template for what a summer blockbuster could be, making it all with practical effects, on location or on real sets because CG hadn't arrived yet. It was an era of genuine movie stars, people who could put butts in seats without having to put on a cape or carry a big magic hammer. Indiana Jones is, ironically enough, a relic of the past, one that probably, by all rights, should have stayed buried. But then along comes Machine Games, carrying a whole new adventure in the crook of their arm, and slamming it down on the table before us as they did. They reminded us what it was like to be back in those uncomfortable cinema seats we had to sit in back in the 90s. They made us imagine, if only for a moment, that there were still yet great secrets to uncover, and by letting us step into the shoes of Indy himself, they let us imagine that we might dare to be the ones uncovering them. For those who have always loved Indiana Jones, the appeal of that is obvious, but for those who haven't yet fallen in love with it, The Great Circle is the best Indiana Jones thing since the original 3 movies, which, as we all know, are the only 3 Indiana Jones movies ever made. The Great Circle is an all-timer, and much like those cinematic masterpieces, I expect it will age remarkably well, but don't wait for that. Play it now. It's on PC, it's on Game Pass, it's on PS5 sometime next year. This is the sort of game that you should go out of your way to play, because every part of it just sings and pops and cracks like Indy's whip. This is a brilliant video game, and I strongly recommend it to you. Always extremely proud to partner with this video's sponsor, Gigabyte Aorus. We've been working together for the past year, and now we are fully Aorus-pilled over here with our PCs, GPUs, and monitors all being powered by Gigabyte. It's a brand I was buying well before they started sponsoring the channel because they've always had a sterling reputation for quality, reliability, and performance. Plus, they've already given away 2 PCs to viewers of the channel in the past, and they're about to give away a 3rd. The giveaway is to celebrate the release of their new lineup of Z89 motherboards supporting the all-new Intel Ultra-Core Series 2 CPUs. The Z89 motherboards from Gigabyte Aorus deliver an absolutely cutting-edge feature set to help you maximize whatever it is you're doing, be it gaming or advanced AI-enabled workflows. They feature robust and efficient power delivery and cooling to keep all of your components running at their fullest potential, maximizing their longevity while doing so. They also support auto-overclocking through AI-powered software that will make it easier than ever before to overclock your unlocked Intel CPU and get the maximum performance from it. They feature the all-new Wi-Fi 7 protocol, which various router manufacturers are rolling support out for right now, delivering unprecedented speeds that go toe-to-toe with wired options, and their screwless M2 storage options make building and upgrading a totally seamless process. The Z890 and Intel Ultra-Core Series 2 CPU combination is so powerful that it can even support locally training your own AI models. It's a limited use case, of course, but if you're someone that is training your own AI models, the Gigabyte has 3 different Z89 motherboards that are custom built for that ultra-demanding workflow. Most of us don't need that though, but you know what we do need? A brand new all-white PC, and that's exactly what Gigabyte Aorus are giving away to one lucky viewer of this video, so long as you live in Australia or New Zealand. This thing features the all-new Gigabyte Z89M Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7 ICE motherboard, an Intel Ultra-Core 7 265K processor, a Gigabyte RTX 4070 Ti Super, and 32GB of DDR5 memory, all housed in a beautiful white chassis, powered and cooled by Coolmaster Kit. It was built by Gigabyte's resident in-house PC builder, Simple Mods, and if you want to see the full build video, I've left a link to that below. If you just want to win it though, I've left a link to that competition entry page below. Give it a click, follow the details, and so long as you're an ANZ, you'll be in the running. Whether it's GPUs, monitors, or cutting-edge motherboards like the all-new Z890 lineup, Gigabyte has always got you covered. To learn more about the Z890 lineup, click the link below. A big thanks to them for sponsoring the video, and a big thanks to you for watching it.